Welcome to Just Read It, a book show where Pacific Northwest writers take on the talents of those authors who are on the New York Times bestseller list. And we have two great ones with us today, Denorja Taylor Price and Ruth Lindemann. And I'm going to start with you, Denorja. I'd love you if you just hold up your book just a little bit to the side there. That's great. And tell us a little bit about your book.
Well, my book is about how bad the planet is right now and the destruction that is going to happen. Mine is a time travel story. And time travelers want to help the people in their community save the planet by forming a global organization to save the bees, to clean the air, to clean the soil, and make sure our food is not full of pesticides.
Okay, let me pop in. It's fiction? Is it would you call it mystery or adventure?
Well, one of the characters wants to be in human form again. Right now she's time traveling. She's a spirit. And she wants to be born in 2047.
Oh.
And that's the year she wants to be born, that year, because that's the year the Earth is supposed to explode. But if she gets there, it won't.
All right. All right, let me stop you there. That's intriguing enough.
So this is their journey.
Okay. All right. So.
Okay.
I tell you, we Northwest writers, we don't lack for imagination. Ruth, how about you? Ruth Lindemann is my second guest. And Ruth, what book are you going to tell us about today?
Well, I wrote this book a couple of years ago, but the story was told to me about 50, 60 years ago by a woman who was kidnapped when she was a young girl out of a concentration camp and taken to the Grand Mufti's villa in Berlin. It's an intriguing story of that era. It involves spies and a lot of action. However, I do try to tell people about the Grand Mufti, who was very evil and had told all of the people to leave the area when Israel became a state. And it's relevant because these folks are still, after all these generations, they're Palestinians and they're caught between these two countries.
Okay, so it's fiction, but it's based on historical events.
Everything I've written in here happened to somebody, or I've researched the material so that I know that it's verifiable.
Oh, that's great.
It's a true story of a lot of people. I've been a speaker for 37 years, telling about my experiences in the Holocaust. So I've heard a lot of stories, and I incorporated them because a lot of these people are gone.
Well, you're leading us, Ruth, right into our book, which is Warlight by Michael Ondaatje, Pulitzer Prize winner of many fames. And Warlight, as we know, takes place in World War II. And so certainly there's a relationship with the Holocaust. So I'll be very interested in your remarks. I'm going to start with Denorja. Denorja, just overall, can you give us a brief? It's a very complicated book.
Yes.
Would you agree with me? It's not a beach read, you know. A lot of characters, but just give our audience a little overview of the circumstances of the book.
Well, the author is a very good writer, but his story is so scattered that it wasn't my favorite. I'll put it that way. But the characters were interesting, but it didn't seem to gel for me. Like when this person called the Moth was supposed to be taking care of him, the two children. One was 12 years old, one was 14. but he never seemed to be around while they were doing all these strange things and meeting all these strange people and staying in different people's houses and sleeping on the floor. It was kind of confusing about what was the real object.
Okay, let's frame it for the audience. It's World War II.
Yes.
The children, a boy and a girl, Nathaniel and his sister Rachel. Their parents apparently are in espionage, and they leave. Is that correct?
Yes.
And go off somewhere to do their thing, and leave them with Moth, a strange character who has a whole host of strange friends, right?
Yes. Yes.
And so these kids are kind of having these disjointed experiences. Maybe that's the background. So go ahead and tell me how you felt about these experiences that these youngsters had.
Well, in the beginning, they were supposed to be in a certain school, and it appeared that they stayed there for maybe a week or so, going to school, but then they found all these other adventures, and it seemed like they were doing, work for the Moth, and then meeting all these strange other characters that were pushing them through their adolescence, and some of it was quite daring and, to me, a little bit off center for young people to be on their own like that. Their different experiences, and I didn't understand what was leading this to the end. When were their parents going to come back? Did they know where their parents were? I knew the father had gone to Singapore, and then the mother was leaving, but we didn't know exactly where she was going.
Yeah.
So it kind of left me kind of wanting to feel something for the characters, and I just felt sorry for the teenagers.
Okay, you got stuck with those kids, and I admit they meet people like Darter, who seems to be a smuggler. He's smuggling dogs and all kinds of things, and Moth is in and out. Okay, Ruth, what's your take on this?
I kept waiting for a plot to develop. And I was really, it kept me going though. But the author is evidently a very good writer. That there's a rhythm to the language that just kept me going. I kept going with that. And the unpredictability of it. Like I said, I kept waiting for something to happen, or why was this? It led to disjointed vignettes, and they didn't seem to make any sense to each other. But it kept me interested just the same. I didn't feel sorry for these kids. They had enough food, and they had enough water, and they had a lot of freedom. And I was very similar in my teens, actually. So I identified with some of this. There were some nuances that I missed, that I just maybe didn't have enough history. Like there must have been a connection with the Balkan Wars, and it happened later with the Slavic people. And I liked his analogies. Like I used chess games in my books also as an analogy for life, how people manipulate each other. And I thought you used that in a very clever way. And the one that stays in my mind is the one with the bizarre thing about the dogs. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Carol.
No, that's all right. That's all right. I want you to make your point. I want.
I only have a second to go. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I wondered if either of you, like Denora and Jay, we do get to his adult years. The parents really never come back. The mother shows up once. We never do find out what happens to the father. But throughout the entire plot, there is this weaving of characters and questioning of who's related to whom. In fact, at the end, there's some question as to whether Nathaniel has given birth to a child, which Darter has adopted. but it's not certain. So what we have is a dreamlike quality, do we not, of people weaving in, and the thread, I wondered what you thought, seems to be history, a history kind of looking back at itself. Go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking that, it didn't tend to connect as a story. I was wondering the total path of the story. The story was the vignettes of the different types of adventures they were having, and it didn't go into an actual story. For me, they had a lot of different adventures, and they seemed to be a little bit disjointed. Why was this happening, and what did this have to do with their journey?
Okay. Well, Ruth, how do you react to that? I mean,
well, that's very similar to what, I mean, that's evidently what the book is about. It's small, little bites of vignettes or things that are happening. They don't seem to string together. I kept waiting for that, but at the end I decided they didn't. However, I would like to say, and I'm going to wind this up, that the title, Warlight, came to focus for me at the end because they were talking about the blackouts. And I identified with that, having lived in Vienna when there were blackouts, when the war started with England. And the coming to America and seeing the lights, there is such a contrast between war lights and peace lights, and it began to go into focus. But does not seem to be a plot. He's just taking us through his life and what he felt and how things happened, and it helps to have some history because he does take it for granted that we know some things that he's talking about.
well, let me ask you, Denoria, picking up on Ruth's point. How many of our lives read like a novel with a beginning and a middle and the end? And isn't it really more touching upon the way we create our own history through our memories, and maybe even continuing to recreate as more memories evolve? I mean, towards the end, when Nathan walks out and wonders, here's a new chapter. Is this child that Darter is raising his own? So that, how do you, I mean, it is a different form of novel. Can we say it's just any less unlike life than life?
Well, there were a lot of vignettes, but it didn't seem that the characters were striving for certain points in their lives. They were doing whatever appeared to them. And the writer, the author, his descriptions of settings and scenes were just beautiful. But it didn't seem for me that it tied into a story, a continuing story.
So you didn't see that. You didn't see this as Nathaniel's quest to make sense of the disappearance of his parents when he was a youngster.
Yes,
I mean,
right.
he was going through the book looking for his mother, and in fact, he gets into this espionage government issue for the very purpose of
finding her.
Finding her. So you didn't see that as enough of a quest to hold it together?
It didn't appear that until the end. It didn't seem like they were on a quest until when he got the job, when he was older, and that became a quest. Before, it was just kind of, we're gonna just hang loose and do this and do a lot of other things, and they didn't seem to have a direction.
Okay, let me pick up your point with Ruth, because you said at the end of the book, Warlight made sense to you.
Well, it came together for me, but that didn't mean there was a plot. Let me say this about that. Not every book has to have a certain plot. This is very different. And I was probably in the middle of it when I said, Ruth, stop looking for a plot. Just go along with what this person's telling you. And you'll learn a lot. And I did. I learned more about dogs racing than I ever wanted to know, and about smuggling, and about the relationship of this teenager with an older man. There were all, as we said, there were all of these little scenes that came up, and the author kept my interest by his description of things. His vocabulary is fabulous,
Yes.
and I could really picture everything. And I think Nigeria came up with that also. It was worth the read, but it was very different. There is really no way to compare this book with something else I've done.
Well, it is a dreamlike quality, the book, and as we've agreed on the outset, this is no beach read.
Exactly.
You have to pay attention. But there is one thing that we all agree on, I take it, is that Michael Ondaatje's writing is, to die for, superlative writer. Well, we've coming to the end of the program. I wanted to ask you if you, Ruth, would recommend this book to anyone else, to our audience.
I belong to a couple of book clubs, and I'm probably going to, just to see what other people say, I'm probably going to recommend it. It's a good read. It's not. I was not being critical. It's just that it didn't fall into all these categories that we set up for ourselves for a story. And I've been telling stories, like I said, for about 37 years. So my story has a plot, and it has a beginning and an end. Yes. And this was so different that it taught me a lesson. You don't have to always follow the exact rules and molds that other people set up for you.
So you would recommend the book?
Yes. I guess if you wanted a yes or no answer, yes, I would.
No, that's fine. Don't take it to the beach. Take it to the book club. Okay. Okay.
I think I would recommend it to. I belong to the Oregon Writers Colony, and there's some excellent writers there too. And we do share books and stuff of what we're reading and what's interesting. And I would mention it that it's an interesting read.
Okay, challenging, interesting.
It wasn't a good read for me, but it was an interesting read because I really learned something by the author's writing of scene setting and character development.
That's great. Well, we have to leave it there, but before we close, I'd like each of you to give your book one more plug. So, Denorja, remind us of what book are we going to rush off to Amazon and buy?
Okay, this is Seedlings.
Seedlings.
And it talks about how bad we've done the planet and what bad shape it's in, and we have to fix her.
All right. Message for all of us. And yes. Ruth, your book.
Well, as I said, this is a lot of history, but it's also entertaining, and it also has a lot of action, and you're going to feel, the reader will feel they'll want to turn the pages. In fact, I would recommend it for right now because it takes you away to another time.
Well, that sounds like a plan, doesn't it, Denorja?
Yes, it does.
For a while would be good. All right, ladies, thank you, Denorja, Ruth. What a fun exploratory discussion.
Thank you for that.
And thank you for inviting me. This is wonderful.
Thank you for coming. And I want to say the same to our viewers. Thank you so much for coming. Consider subscribing. We appear about every 2 months. So hang with us, and we'll see you next time at Just Read It.